common piece of advice out there for people whose dream is to write a novel, and that is just to start writing, hit your word count, and eventually you'll figure it out and you'll have a novel at the end. This advice is completely wrong. When I started writing my first novel in 2016, I set a goal that I was going to write 300 words a day, and I didn't have any grander plans beyond that. I had an idea for a story, but I actually had absolutely no idea where that story was going. What I had was a premise, not a plot. And also, I didn't really have any idea about what makes writing work on a deeper level. I didn't know that my story needed a narrative arc or a central theme. I worked on that novel for years, and I would often find myself stuck in some kind of plot corner where I couldn't write my way out. I didn't have a roadmap for where I wanted my story to go. I learned what I now think is the most important lesson for aspiring novelists, and that is you have to start with a blueprint. Of course, writing a lot helps build the habit and can help you learn how your particular voice comes across on the page, but unless you're actually studying what makes a story work, then you're just reinforcing bad habits. And unfortunately, you'll probably end up with a story that doesn't go anywhere, that you don't finish, and that nobody wants to read. I don't want that for you. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about the things you need to be successful in writing that novel of your dreams. If you like to watch these kind of supportive and informative videos about the writing process, then make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. You can also check out my own writing on my Substack with the link below. I know a lot of people who have dreamed of writing a novel since they were a little kid, or they have this goal that by the end of their life, they want to tell a grand story. That might take place in the form of a novel, or it might be a memoir, or even a screenplay. Everything I'm going to talk about in today's video is going to apply to those as well. If you don't know me already, I'm Maureen Wiley. I'm a professor of composition, and I'm also a book coach, and I help people overcome their limiting beliefs in order to write fearlessly. For a lot of people, when they're thinking about writing a novel, they're struck by some inspiration. They have an idea for a story or the kernel of their novel, and they use that inspiration to just get started, open up a document, and start writing. They're hoping that that inspiration is going to carry them forward through the weeks, months, and sometimes even years it takes to write an effective novel. But unfortunately, as I have seen far too many times, what this leads to is things like stalling out halfway, putting the novel away, and giving up on the dream for good, or having a meandering story that has no plot and no promise, or feeling exhausted and demoralized by the time you finish your story because there's so much to do in the revision process. This is why a lot of people actually never get started on writing their novel. They can imagine that future where they get stuck, they get frustrated, and they give up. So unfortunately, they give up ahead of time and they never even get started. Sometimes this phase comes a little bit later when someone is sending out their story to publishers or literary agents and they're not hearing anything back. So what can we do to change this? Well, great writing isn't magic. It follows specific structure and principles. Think of it like an architect. You wouldn't build a house without a blueprint, so you shouldn't write a novel without a blueprint for your book. I'm not saying you have to follow any one particular storytelling method. I'm a fan of all storytelling methods because of the support that they provide for writers, but you do need to understand the underlying mechanics of storytelling, which is something that researchers have even studied in the realm of neuroscience and the impact of storytelling on the human brain. If you think about it, it makes sense. Human beings have been telling stories since time immemorial, so it would make sense that there's an underlying structure that we all recognize. This is an echo of the idea of the hero's journey or the power of myth from the teacher and philosopher Joseph Campbell, who I talk about in my video on the hero's journey and how you can apply it to your own life. If you want to check out that video, I'll put the link up here. So the first thing you need as a writer is some kind of structure or story blueprint. This is something that book coaches can actually help you out with. And I am currently running a 90-day novel incubator where I'm talking about some of the elements of an effective story structure, including some live group coaching and some exercises that can help you clarify what you want your story to include. This 90-day novel incubator is running this spring. It's completely free, and if you want to join us, check out the link below. The second thing you need is you need to know what is your story arc. And the only way to discover your story arc is to know who is the protagonist of your story. You'd be surprised, but as a book coach, I often come across clients who don't actually know the main character of their story. They want to tell the story from multiple perspectives, or they have multiple characters who we could consider the main character. But if you want to have a story that works, you need to narrow your focus to one particular protagonist, because it is their arc of change, their narrative arc, that we are going to explore over the course of your story. One of the ways we can uncover your protagonist's narrative arc is to identify ahead of time what is the fundamental misbelief that your protagonist holds. Every character starts off with some fundamental misbelief that shapes their worldview. And in their interactions with others and in the action that takes place in the plot, that worldview is often challenged, shifted, and eventually changed. The story is going to be challenging their belief along the way, forcing them to grow and ultimately arriving at a new understanding of the world. If you think that all novels that work don't have this fundamental misbelief, I challenge you to think of one and leave it below in the comments. Once we understand our protagonist's fundamental misbelief, it can help us to build an internal arc of change. Plot isn't just about what happens in the story. It's about how the protagonist relates to what happens through their emotions and perceptions. So every single scene is going to have some impact on that internal worldview of your character, which is why we need to know it ahead of time. If you know your character's fundamental misbelief and you understand where you need your character to get to by the end of your story, you won't write yourself into a story corner and you won't feel like giving up. Ultimately, this is what builds what's known as narrative drive. Narrative drive is the energy, the propulsion, the emotional drive that brings the character forward through the plot and ultimately helps them to arrive at their new worldview. Writing a novel is a lot like taking a long road trip. You probably wouldn't want to just start driving without any particular destination in mind, and it's helpful to have things like maps or GPS to guide you along the way. You probably want to come up with a rough plan for where you're going to go and what stops you're going to make along the way and what things you want to experience on this road trip. I mean, it's a vacation after all. Writing a novel is exactly the same. You don't need a detailed turn-by-turn breakdown, and most likely things are going to change along the road trip, but you do need a general roadmap so you don't get lost. Besides understanding these elements and building a blueprint for your novel, the other thing that writers need in order to be successful is they need community. Sometimes aspiring novelists think that they have to do it all on their own, but the best authors often have writer friends, a writing space or community, and sometimes even a book coach like me. That community can support them and provide accountability, as well as help them to break down any story problems and get out of that space of procrastination and stuckness. So if you're ready to start taking your writing seriously without getting stuck or lost in endless revisions, come join my 90-day novel incubator. Every week, I provide guidance on things like genre, storytelling structure, and scene breakdowns. And during our live group coaching call, I can provide you individual feedback on your work for the low cost of absolutely free. And as a bonus, you get a supportive writing space to explore that novel that you've always dreamed of writing. It's not too late to join. You can join anytime, and you can catch the replays from previous weeks to see what we've already covered. I'll let you in on a little secret. I'm actually working on my own novel during this novel incubator as well. The reason I started this is not only do I love talking about books and writing and book coaching, but I'm also in a place of needing some support and needing the kind of guidance and accountability that comes from having a specific community dedicated to a creative project. In my opinion, now is the perfect time to escape into the world of storytelling and practice building the skills of being a novelist whose stories work. And if you're not ready to start writing your novel, come join us anyway, and you will learn a ton for the day when you do feel ready and confident to get started.